I want you to imagine working for the same company for 15 years. 15 years of loyalty, sweat, and sacrifice. Then one morning, your boss looks you in the eye and tells you that you're too old. Too old to be useful. Too old to represent the company. Just like that, everything you built crumbles. That is exactly what happened to Margaret. She thought her career was over. She thought her life was finished. But what her boss didn't know was that Margaret wasn't just any employee. She had a secret weapon. And by the time she was done, his entire empire came crashing down like a house of cards. Please, before we dive into this shocking story of revenge and justice, do me a favor. Hit that like button. It helps us reach more people who need to hear stories like this. And if you haven't subscribed yet, press that button now. You don't want to miss what happens next. Now, let me introduce you to Margaret Chen. Margaret was 52 years old, but she had the energy of a woman half her age. She was the senior operations manager at Pinnacle Tech Solutions, one of the fastest growing tech companies in San Francisco. For 15 years, Margaret had been the backbone of that company. She trained new employees. She smoothed over client complaints. She worked weekends when everyone else went home to their families. Margaret didn't just work at Pinnacle. She bled for it. But there was a new CEO. His name was Brandon Sterling, a 35-year-old man who wore designer suits and drove a Tesla that cost more than most people's houses. Brandon didn't build Pinnacle. He inherited it from his father. And the moment he took over, he decided to rebrand the company as young, fresh, and modern. In Brandon's eyes, anyone over 40 was a dinosaur. It was a Tuesday morning when Margaret's world collapsed. She was called into Brandon's office. The room smelled of expensive cologne and arrogance. Brandon didn't even look up from his phone when she entered. "Sit down, Margaret," he said, his voice flat and cold. Margaret sat, her heart already beginning to race. She knew this tone. It was the tone of bad news. "I'm going to be direct with you," Brandon continued, finally looking at her. "We're restructuring the company. We need a younger image. Clients want to see fresh faces, people they can relate to. And frankly, Margaret, you don't fit that image anymore." The words hit her like a slap. "What are you saying?" Margaret asked, her voice trembling. "I'm saying you're fired. Effective immediately," Brandon said, leaning back in his leather chair with a smirk. "We'll give you 2 months severance." "That's generous, considering." "Considering what?" Margaret's voice rose. "Considering I've given 15 years of my life to this company? Considering I trained half the people in this building." Brandon shrugged. "Times change. People change. You're too old for this industry, Margaret. Accept it and move on." Margaret felt tears stinging her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not in front of him. She stood up, her legs shaking, and walked out of that office with her head held high. But inside, she was shattered. Can you imagine that kind of betrayal? 15 years of dedication, dismissed in 5 minutes because of your age. But here's the thing about Margaret. She wasn't the type to cry in her pillow and give up. No, Margaret was a fighter. And she was about to teach Brandon Sterling the most expensive lesson of his life. For the first week after being fired, Margaret allowed herself to grieve. She stayed in her small apartment in the Mission District, staring at the ceiling, wondering what went wrong. Her savings were thin. Her daughter was in college, and the tuition was due soon. Panic clawed at her chest every morning. But then, on the 8th day, something shifted. Margaret remembered something. Something Brandon had forgotten. You see, during her 15 years at Pinnacle, Margaret wasn't just managing operations. She was the keeper of secrets. She knew every dirty deal, every shortcut, every corner that had been cut to save money. She knew about the tax evasion schemes. She knew about the fake invoices. She knew about the bribes paid to government officials to secure contracts. And most importantly, she had copies. Email threads, financial documents, recorded phone calls. Margaret had been meticulous, not because she planned to use them, but because she believed in accountability. Now, those documents were about to become her weapon. Margaret didn't rush. She spent 2 weeks organizing everything. She created a detailed dossier, over 300 pages long, documenting every illegal activity Pinnacle Tech Solutions had engaged in over the past decade. Then, she made copies. Lots of copies. And she started reaching out. Her first call was to the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC. She sent them a full report, complete with evidence. But Margaret didn't stop there. She contacted the Internal Revenue Service about the tax fraud. She reached out to investigative journalists at major newspapers. She even sent anonymous tips to Pinnacle's biggest clients, letting them know they had been overcharged for years. Within 3 weeks, the storm began. The SEC raided Pinnacle's headquarters. Federal agents in dark suits stormed the building, seizing computers and files. Employees were questioned. Accounts were frozen. The news spread like wildfire. Brandon's face was plastered all over the news. Headlines screamed, "Tech CEO under investigation for fraud and tax evasion." Pinnacle Tech Solutions, a house built on lies. Brandon tried to fight it. He hired the best lawyers money could buy. But the evidence was overwhelming. Every document Margaret provided was authenticated. Every email was traced. There was no escape. Pinnacle's clients began pulling out. Contracts worth millions of dollars were canceled overnight. Investors withdrew their funding. The company's stock, which had been soaring, plummeted. Within 2 months, Pinnacle Tech Solutions was bankrupt. The company that Brandon inherited, the company his father spent decades building, was gone. Completely destroyed. But Margaret wasn't done yet. Remember, this wasn't just about revenge. This was about justice. Margaret reached out to former employees who had been mistreated by Brandon. She helped them file a class action lawsuit for wrongful termination and workplace discrimination. The lawsuit was successful. Brandon was ordered to pay millions in compensation. And here's the sweetest part. While Brandon's world was crumbling, Margaret was rising. The journalists who covered the Pinnacle scandal were impressed by her courage and integrity. They wrote about her. Her story went viral. Soon, other companies started reaching out. They wanted someone with her experience, her ethics, her backbone. Within 6 months, Margaret had 3 job offers. She chose the best one, a position as chief operating officer at a multinational tech firm, with a salary triple what she earned at Pinnacle. The last time Margaret saw Brandon was in court. He looked like a shadow of the man who had fired her. His designer suit was wrinkled. His eyes were hollow. When their eyes met, Margaret didn't gloat. She simply nodded. That nod said everything. It said, "You underestimated me, and now you've paid the price." My people, let me tell you something. Age is not a weakness. Experience is not a burden. The same hands that built something can tear it down if you disrespect them. Brandon thought he was untouchable because he had money and power. But he forgot one important thing. Never, ever underestimate the person you've wronged, because they might just be the one holding the match that burns your empire to the ground. If this story touched you, if it reminded you that justice is possible, do me a favor. Hit that like button and share this video. And drop a comment below telling me, have you ever been underestimated? How did you prove them wrong? I want to hear your stories. Remember, no weapon formed against you shall prosper. Keep fighting, keep believing, and never let anyone tell you that you're too old, too weak, or too anything to succeed. Your time will come.